Hello everyone and welcome to today's FinTech Finance Virtual Arena. Joining me today is Fiona Brown from Datactics. Fiona, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Thanks very much, Doug, for having us today. Yes, doing good today and looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be discussing some pretty kind of industry-changing subject today because as we've seen, 2020, some could call it the year of the AML fines, and we are going to be discussing, obviously, the finance industry, data, and all this AML jargon. So, Fiona, before we begin, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and Datactics, please?
Yeah. Hello everyone. My name is Fiona Brown, and I head up the machine learning team at Datactics. So my background is primarily in software engineering, and I've got a PhD in applied AI. And I've also got experience within the industry and within academia as well. So about a year and a half ago, I moved into Datactics to bring in machine learning to the Datactics platform. So Datactics is a 50+ person company and growing. We are based here in Belfast, but we also have offices in Milan and in London as well. And we focus on data quality and matching at scale. We have a self-service data quality platform, so we are very much into data profiling, data quality, matching, and so on. And we are augmenting this with machine learning capability.
Excellent. So I've got to ask you, financial institutions are known for having such a wealth of data, more than pretty much any other vertical in the world. So with that in mind, how can banks and large institutions ever really know that the data quality that they have is of a good enough standard when they're collecting millions of inputs of data every day, every minute?
Yeah. This really is a challenge, and even whenever you're looking at, for example, entity data as well, keeping on top of that, and the decay rate of data also, it is a big challenge for corporations and financial institutions keeping on top of that. In terms of ensuring data quality, well, we've got a lot of regulations in now since the financial crisis of 2008-2009, and that has actually helped then improve data quality and enforce institutions to have a handle on their data, and ensuring that it is kept up to date. And also you've got other data issues in terms of the security of your data, the privacy of your data, and so on as well. And there are ways in which you can check the accuracy and the timeliness of your data. So doing a pulse check on it, ensuring that it meets regulations, but also that it's correct and can be used for further downstream processes.
Incredible. So I mean, with that in mind, where does Datactics fit into the AML arena?
Yeah, so the AML process itself, it's pretty fast, and what we focus on is the area of profiling, data quality, and matching of data. So this is our bread and butter, and the platform that we've built has had many thousands persons hours built into building this platform to address these issues. And if I could maybe talk a little bit more about the data quality and matching side and where we feel that's important as well. So within the AML process, one of the areas in which, say, a financial institution onboarding a client, what they need to do is to be able to verify who the client is and who they are working with. And in order to do that, you need to do a lot of checks. So that could be checking within your internal system. So Doug, you alluded to the volume of data that banks have themselves. But you also have outside public or other entity data that you can check against as well. So for example, you're checking against sanctions lists and watch lists and politically exposed people's lists and so on. So you've got a large volume of data which you can check and verify against. And this is often quite a tricky process due to data quality. So for example, you could have misspellings in data, and that could be maybe intentional from a fraud point of view. You can also have maybe data in a different language, so you've got the transliteration process then as well. So that's what we focus on in Datactics, is the whole data quality and cleansing and matching at scale. So for example, fuzzy matching. And this is where we're bringing in the machine learning process and the work that we're doing in our team in terms of how can we automate those more manual processes where people are going off and manually checking, is this an entity, a match or not to a certain list.
Was the name of it fuzzy matching, did you say?
Yes, so we have a two-pronged approach to our matching. So we use data cleansing profiling at the start to ensure the data is of decent quality before we do the matching. We then use fuzzy matching and build rules, so your traditional rules-based approach. But for those matches which don't quite hit a high confidence threshold, which often then go downstream for manual review, this is where we're employing our machine learning to aid with that manual remediation process.
Incredible. So I've got to ask, with all these brilliant new technologies and innovations, why should the banks look to do it on their own? I mean, typically, the banks have always looked to kind of try and do as much as they can in-house, but from what you've been telling me, this sounds almost science fiction levels of technology. I mean, do you think, is it just too risky for a bank to actually keep on doing this in-house? Do they need to partner?
From looking, for example, from the FCA and the fines that they have issued to financial institutions, what they've come out and said is that a lot of the fines are being issued due to the AML processes being performed within the institutions. The data or the lack of data that is there and causing some of these issues. And as you said, Doug, a lot of institutions are doing this in-house, and one of the key issues there is having enough resource to do this and to perform your checks and the different processes within the anti-money laundering pipeline, I suppose. And I think what's interesting as well is that if you bring it back to the fundamentals, and if you get your process right, and if you get your data into order, and if you use technology to automate and streamline some of these processes, I think that will help and go a long way in hopefully even speeding up the onboarding clients and then adhering to the AML regulations as well.
Interesting. So, I've got to ask then, do you think, we've already seen huge amounts of fines for AML failings from the banks this year in 2020. I think it's up to $5.6 billion currently, which is more already than 2019 had. So do you think this is going to be a continuing trend where just the sheer volume of people being onboarded quickly and also the speed of technological advances when it comes to fraud and digital fluffing of data, do you think this is just going to be an exponential thing we're going to see year on year out, and the banks are just really never going to grapple with it? Is it just something we have to become, to say, the new normal?
I would hope that wouldn't be the case, Doug. And I think if we look across the ocean to what's happening in the US, yes, we still see, large volumes of fines being propagated there. However, I think 2019 or 2020 isn't as bad as 2019 over there.
Oh, okay.
And I think if we look at, well, what could be done here? So, if, for example, there was a Commerce Bank where the FCA had issued a fine of about 38 million in 2018, and what they had highlighted was, there was issues in the process that they were using. So they were using tools and systems where, for example, 40 high-risk countries weren't included, and they had missed off 1,000 plus clients that they should have been doing AML checks with, but they hadn't. So that boils down to being a data issue and a process issue. So getting your house into order in terms of ensuring that you've got the right data there, and also the right process there. I think if we see fundamental shifts at those basic building blocks, I think that would go a long way in helping the compliance, certainly to AML, because AML is a big deal, and although it can be seen as an administration burden, well, behind the scenes, you've got criminal and terrorist activity, so it's essential that the financial institutions get a handle on this, and also by improving their onboarding experience, they're improving the experience for their clients as well. So it's sort of a win-win situation.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I mean, speaking of those kind of use cases, you can improve the customer experience with the onboarding, and obviously counter terrorism and everything like that. But if you were to say to the board members of a large institution, these fines are going to keep happening, why should they look to kind of bring in this new technology, clean their data, when ultimately they just want to get to that bottom line?
I think it's all symbiotic. It's all within the one ecosystem. So it's essential, to have your building blocks there. So Doug, you've talked about ensuring your good quality, clean data. So yes, that's important for your onboarding process. But it's also important downstream as well for maybe if you're wanting to do more predictive analytics or trend analysis, or even identifying what products I should recommend and tailor to the clients that I currently have, and just getting those fundamentals right at the start will pay dividends further downstream in the process, and it will hopefully speed up that onboarding process. So I think we'd read a statistic where onboarding can cost a financial institution something like 28 million a year, to onboard clients.
Wow.
So
even digitally now, that's incredible.
If it's those marginal gains, if you can chip away at that and reduce some of those pain points, it will have a knock-on effect further downstream.
Excellent. And you've also mentioned, obviously, your experience and expertise comes in from the machine learning and the AI aspect. And you've told us already on the show that this cuts down a lot of the manual processes. But I mean, are there any other influences that AI and machine learning can have on the onboarding process, on the anti-AML side of things too?
I suppose there's not one silver bullet as such where you'll apply one machine learning technique and it's going to solve all the AML issues, but it's deploying these these approaches in different areas. So for example, we've seen that a lot of the onboarding process is gathering data, extracting information out of that data, typing things into systems and so on. So we've seen a lot of NLP techniques to extract data from documents. So that's one area. Where we use machine learning is in our matching process to reduce manual review. So that's another area. You see, for example, ML techniques, supervised and unsupervised approaches in analysing transactions within a financial institution and trying to identify fraudulent transactions. And actually, where we think a really interesting area is the graph and network analysis side of machine learning and how it can be deployed in AML and fraud detection. So you've got lots of the nice areas in terms of having your proper data quality, being able to link entities together and model relationships, and then deploying things like community detection, cluster analysis techniques, and to identify fraudulent behaviour and so on. And it is a very interesting area, and it's just trying to keep up with what sort of more criminally intentioned minds are doing, bearing in mind that they too have access to the same machine learning tools.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about it. We've kind of touched on it briefly, but is this going to be just a never-ending battle? Is it something that banks have to now realise that, as you say, they have to get their house in order to be able to kind of exponentially continue to keep fighting the fight? Or is this something that there's going to be a kind of, eventually AI and machine learning will just immediately be able to notice the subtle differences between the data sets and immediately just kind of stop any kind of fraudulent attempt when the customer is being onboarded or anything like that? Or is it, as I said, is this going to be an ongoing battle that banks are just going to have to realise they have to set aside quite a large portion of their resources to fight?
So I'll probably give a politician's answer to this and say it's probably a bit of both. Yeah. So I'd say there'll be the continual cat and mouse game in terms of, I don't think financial institutions will be able to completely stamp out or catch out all criminal activity, because it's they're very creative, and I think it will be that constant cat and mouse game. And as I had said in the previous answer, yes, we're very lucky that we're able to deploy such machine learning solutions into production and to monitor patterns in data and detect those weak signals and so on, which could highlight, do you know what, there's something fraudulent going on here, let's go and investigate. And at the same time, you've got those who are trying to maybe trick the system, who can use the same techniques. So, for example, in the US and Canada, one way to potentially identify, fraud was taking a look at, transactions and deposits over $10,000 and so on, and that was maybe a red flag. But criminals can detect it. Yes, we'll go under this amount, and they're also able to use machine learning to sort of muddy their transactions, or divide it up into smaller or larger amounts so it looks more randomized. So you're hiding those signals as well. So it is that cat and mouse game.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. You assume that they will be the height of their nefarious game, but when you hear stories like that, that's just absolutely incredible to see the lengths they'll go to. I've got to ask as well, as an industry, why do you think 2018-19 were so bad for a lot of these AML breaches?
Whenever you looked at the fines for these AML breaches, a lot of them were going back to maybe from, a period of 2012 to 2017 and so on. There's been the historic side of it as well, and it's just taken time to bring this all together and put it to the fore. So you've got that to bear in mind. But yes, I think it's just that pinnacle of AML's hard. Regulators know that it's hard. They're doing a better job now in terms of providing guidelines to financial institutions and how to address this. And it's just then for financial institutions to basically get themselves geared up to address and to adhere to these regulations. And I think it's a wake-up call as well, that this is a serious business, and I know it's expensive and it can be seen as time-consuming, but if you don't do this, this is the repercussions of that as well. So maybe there is a bit of that.
Sure. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your insight. And if I could ask one last question, what's the future for Datactics then?
Oh, well, the future is bright for Datactics. So as we had said at the start of the call, Doug, we're a 50+ person company, so we are continually growing, and we've got great experience in terms of the whole data quality cleansing and matching. Our focus has been on the financial sector, but we're also moving into the governmental sector and so on as well. And we see machine learning as one of the routes to progress for us.
Brilliant. Well, Fiona, thank you so much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been really insightful for me, because you always see these giant fines in the headlines, and you really want to know what's behind it all. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, Doug.
Brilliant. And to all our viewers, thank you so much for watching. You can catch the rest of the series and much more over at www.fintechf.com, and of course our YouTube and LinkedIn page. So thank you all, and I'll see you soon.